Okay, here we are in section 3.2, ratio and proportion. And we actually had a little bit of introduction to this in 2.4. Okay, simply because of the way that I presented how we did percent problems. We actually set them up in proportions. And we've talked a little bit about ratio as well when we talked about rational numbers being any number that has a fractional form. And so we've kind of planted the seeds for coming up to now what ratio and proportion. So after the heaviness, probably, or at least the intensive time that you put into 3.1, 3.2 is meant to be kind of a breather after that. And this will wrap up the, this marks the end of new material for Primary Exam 2. Okay, so let's talk about what a ratio is. And it is a comparison of two amounts. Now, what form that might take might come in forms of a fraction, where the first item they're talked about is put over the top of the second item. So first item over the second item in terms of a ratio. Or it might be using a colon, where they just read it off. First item is compared to, using a colon here, the second item. And it can represent lots of different things. You could be comparing a ratio of part to whole, where you have part of the group that you're talking about compared to the whole of the group, or part of the group to another part. Or you could even compare the whole group to part of the group. You could reverse that comparison. Or you could even compare outside of the group to another group. So there's lots of ways you can set up a ratio. So we're going to first start practicing by expressing each ratio as a fraction reduced to lowest terms. And then we'll get some practice doing the colon. So this one is, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. We just want to put it in ratio form. So it's the first item mentioned and then the second item mentioned. It just goes first over second as a fraction and then reduced. So this one is going to be equal to 14 over 49. We're looking to reduce that, meaning what goes into both equally. I'd like you to start thinking of this in terms of what is the factorization, what do they multiply out to. This is going to pay off hugely when you get further on in the algebra, and especially in 65 as we start to factor, definitely in 95. Huge payoff. So if you can start thinking like this, visualize that that's what's happening, is it's being multiplied by the same thing top and bottom. That's just equal to 1, and so that's why we can reduce. So our answer here is as a fraction it's 2/7. Now another way to write that ratio would be 2 colon 7, the ratio of 2 to 7. The next set of instructions say in class there are 20 men and 10 women. Find each ratio, express as a reduced fraction, and then using a colon. So there's going to be two expressions. I went ahead and did it as a bonus here on this first one, but they want you to do it for sure on these next set of problems, and we'll do this example together. So number 10 says, find the ratio of the number of men to the number of students in the class. So it might be helpful just to give yourself a reminder of what they're asking, at least in shortened version here. They want to know the ratio of men to students. So in this case, they tell us there's 20 men. They don't tell us the number of students, but we can deduce that if you've got 20 men plus 10 women, there's going to be 30 students in the class. SS is a teacher abbreviation for students. T for teacher, S for student, multiple students, SS. Okay. So we want the ratio of 20 to 30. So they want to do a fraction, a reduced fraction. So the fraction would look like 20 to 30, not 30 to 20, not because it'd be improper, but because we always take the first item over the second item mentioned. So if they had told us find the ratio of students to men, then it would be 30 over 20. But they said men to students, so it's 20 over 30. 20 men over 30 students. As a reduced fraction, that's like saying 10 times 2, 10 times 3. Those 10s cancel because they're being multiplied top and bottom by 10. It's like saying 10 over 10 times 2 over 3, and that's just 1 times 2 over 3. So that's just 2 over 3. So that's the reduced fractions. So the reduced, I'm going off my page here, of where I wanted to be. The reduced fraction is 2 over 3. The colon version would be 2 colon 3. Okay, I got in the way here of my own next introduction. So a proportion then, that's what a ratio is, and there's some practice with ratios. A proportion then is when you have an equation involving ratios. So basically you have one ratio equal to another ratio. We've seen this before. We've just phrased it as one fraction equal to one fraction, and we've actually solved these before in 2.4. Because of the way that I presented percents, I set them up as a ratio. Part over whole equals percent over 100, and then we used cross multiplication. So the tip, the recall, it's a recall for us because we did it in 2.4. The tip for solving one fraction equal to one fraction is you cross multiply. And I apologize for the typo here. I forgot to type in the instructions. So right here above that recall tip, solve each proportion, are the instructions for this type of problem. And I bet I'm at the bottom of my page. I am. So we will pause this video and we'll do these proportions that we need to solve in the next one. See you there.